Okay, we're going to get started. Haven't figured a way in which to get everybody to move up front, so I know that's futile. But thank you so much for coming to this session. I know earlier in the general session, gainful employment, enrollment reporting, 150% were being sold as must-do and go to those sessions. And financial literacy wasn't one of the must-dos, but obviously those of you that are here feel that it's important. And I think the must-do that we all share is that we must do more. We know we have entrance and exit counseling. There was reference this morning to the experimental site, to adding additional counseling to exit counseling. So we're really excited about that. And hopefully that will reveal some of the successful practices for the doing more and things that we can do in addition to those that we're required to do. So our expectation today for this session, the small investment, big return, is certainly that in the immediate future, your investment of your time will prove to be worthwhile, and the information that we'll share will motivate you and get you excited about starting something or doing more. So our expectation is shared between myself and Gretchen, and my name is Elizabeth Coogan, and I am a senior advisor in the Customer Experience Group at Federal Student Aid. So we're the folks who are responsible for studentaid.gov, the financial aid toolkit, some of the digital engagement information at FAFSA, the tweets and Facebook pages. And my responsibility is to provide services and strategies for financial literacy directly to students and to help schools, and certainly we know that we can't do it alone, so this is a great opportunity to talk to you and give you some ideas and solicit your help. Some of the work that I do in addition to working at ED is work on the Financial Literacy and Education Commission, which is a group of about 23 federal agencies that are all about financial education. We do a lot of work with federal benefits recipients. So the financial aid students or recipients of financial aids are receiving a federal benefit, and there should be some correlation to financial education with those benefits that they're receiving. Another group that I work with is the, I know the acronym very well, NSCFW, the National Summit for Collegiate Financial Wellness. Hopefully many of you in the room know about that already. This year will be the fourth time that they're getting together, and it's all about post-secondary and financial literacy and financial capability and sharing best practices. It's a wonderful organization. You can join their listserv, and you can also make plans to attend the conference, where there are a lot of like-minded people, such as yourselves, that are interested in hearing what other schools are doing and what's working for them. So I'm joined by Gretchen Holthaus, and I actually met Gretchen at the last summit and was really excited to hear about her background. Gretchen has her master's in education, and her thesis was on financial literacy programs among college students. She's getting her doctorate degree and working in student success programs at Indiana University. She comes via Wichita State. She was the student money management coordinator there and co-authored an online money management program that she's going to share more about. So Gretchen and I are both tremendously personally committed to financial literacy, and we feel that the student loan business isn't, as people call, student loan crisis. We don't think it's a crisis. We think it's an opportunity to help people with their economic lives, and there's a lot that we can do about it. So what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to give you some FSA updates, some that I've chosen, some new, some not so new information, and Gretchen is going to talk about her firsthand experience in the student money management world, share some information on the My College Money Plan product, and I'd like to point out the appendix resources. If you've seen the presentation already, it's quite comprehensive. There's a tiny little font. Hopefully it wasn't threatening, thinking that we're going to go through all of that. The appendix contains research information about best practices in financial literacy, lots of information about peer counseling programs, things that are working, best practices, and some really useful research, some of which I'm going to discuss during the presentation. In addition, there are student money management job descriptions, various things all the way from financial literacy director to financial literacy counselor, and many of these job descriptions are taking place within offices outside of the financial aid office. So maybe that's encouraging to you. So we're not here to tell you all about what you should be doing and what you have to be doing, but it's ways in which you can create relationships with other offices on your campus to help your students make good financial decisions. So let's get started with the FSA updates. And I sort of laughed to myself when I put this first bullet up there about financial capability in the United States, because I'm so passionate about this, and I was afraid I was going to frighten you all about, oh boy, what's she going to start talking about? I thought we were here about federal student aid and post-secondary students. It reminded me of a funny little story that I wanted to tell, and it was an economist from Standard & Poor's got up and he had a slide about something of great magnitude, and he said, people got a little worried, and he said, I'd like to share a little personal story with you. I was driving down the New Jersey Turnpike with my wife, and my daughter chimed in from the back, and she said, Mom, what's that building over there? And so he said he turned around, and he looked, and he said, sweetheart, why didn't you ask me about that? And she said, well, I guess I didn't really want to know that much about it. So I hope, I could talk on and on about financial literacy, so I'll try to contain my thoughts and a lot of firsthand experience that Gretchen will share with you. So in the financial capability in the United States is actually in reference to this right here, and this is a survey from FINRA, and it's called Financial Capability in the United States. And it was recently released in 2016, and it is in the back of your guide, so you can link to that, and hopefully you'll have some interest in doing so. I'm going to share some information on borrower surveys, and those are conducted out of the Customer Experience Group. We conduct surveys on borrowers in default, delinquent borrowers. We also conduct surveys on some of our products to see what borrowers think about them, as well as customer satisfaction surveys. Some of the borrower resources that I'll share with you, some are new and some are not so new. I think though many of you may need a reminder about some of them, and hopefully we can get a show of hands and I can know what people are using and what their opinion is on them. And finally, the financial literacy guidance. And that's something really, again, not just for the financial aid office, but for the financial aid office to share with other offices who may be speaking to students about financial literacy. It's a valuable resource to help provide knowledge to students. So this is from the FINRA survey, and the quote from them was, the financial capability is a multi-dimensional concept that encompasses a combination of knowledge, resources, access, and habits. And I underlined the word access because we're all collectively responsible providing that access to funds for students who are figuring out how to pay for college and hopefully improve their economic lives, right? So the link to the survey is at the bottom of this slide as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the survey and what they focus on in terms of key components of financial capability. Because financial capability is basically how people deal with everyday finances, and they also look at indicators of financial stress, and those individuals ages 34 and under are more likely to show signs of financial stress. So that's in likelihood a lot of our students. The first one was making ends meet. That's, oops, sorry, screwed up on that one. That's basically how students manage their money and whether or not they are spending more than they're making. And I think probably a lot of us can defer to stories about students that way overspend. The planning ahead, they included new numbers on household budgeting. So that was really, I was thrilled about that because federal student aid, we are very budget happy. I was just telling Gretchen earlier, I said, yeah, I see that a lot of the financial aid folks like to plan ahead. And I heard this morning two people talking about what time they were going to meet for happy hour. We consider budgeting a planning tool, and we see the importance of planning. And we think that the benefits of doing a budget are it's good practice for students to practice planning, and obviously good planning spills over to their academic lives as well. In terms of managing financial products, this year's survey, which was conducted in 2015, the results were in 2016, they did add student loans. So they really have a lot of emphasis on student loans and students' opinions on their loans and whether or not they feel capable of paying them back and so forth. So that survey included 26% of the population that had student loans. So the survey was about 27,000 respondents, and it was not just specifically for those people that had student loans. It was just in general to find out about their financial capabilities. And the last of the four key components of financial capability financial knowledge and decision-making. So we have lots of opportunities in which to provide financial knowledge in the post-secondary world, but some of the challenges we have are what students do with that knowledge and whether or not they take the action that it leads to economic success, or at least economic stability. So the next slide is from the National Financial Capability Survey, and it was specifically in reference to student loans. And it asked the question, did you estimate the monthly payment when obtaining your most recent loan? So the findings from this survey seem to suggest that many loan holders don't fully understand what they were getting when they took out their loans. Only 30% say they had calculated their payment. 54% did not try and estimate their payment. We're hoping that more people are aware of the repayment estimator, and we're going to show you a couple of things that can be useful to direct students to that. And 48% of those that had student loans in this survey were concerned that they will not be able to pay off their loans. So that was a little bit disconcerting. So the next two slides are survey results from federal student aid surveys. And this one here, the question we asked was, if you could go through the process of financing your education all over again, would you take the same action or make a change? And you can see there's a significant percentage of those that are in default and delinquency that wish they could or would like to make a change. Okay. This morning, Matt Sissa talked about safeguarding taxpayer dollars, and the thought came to me was we're safeguarding really, or trying to safeguard the financial future of a lot of these students that are coming through our door. The next survey question that I thought might be of interest to you was, when you first enrolled in school, you may have had an idea of how much you expected to borrow in student debt, and did you borrow more or less than originally anticipated? And there's a significant percentage of those students who answered they borrowed a lot more than they anticipated. So there's got to be a way in which we can convey to borrowers how much they borrowed before they start borrowing more, and maybe what that repayment amount might look like for the amount that they have borrowed. So some of these were verbatim comments that we allowed students to respond to in the survey, and I don't think many of these would surprise you, but and I think this all points to the fact that we need to provide the knowledge, the resources, and information to students early on and frequently. So a resource that we think provides information to students, the Financial Awareness Counseling Tool that was put out in 2012. How many of you are using that? Hopefully we'll get a good show of hands. Hello, back there, I think. I wish I could see more hands, but it's mobile accessible right now. Hopefully you know about that, and if you don't, you'll check that out. And so we really need your help in bringing students to it, or maybe not even you directly bringing students to it, but bringing it to those people that are reaching students. So it might not be your office, and you might find by collaborating with another office on your campus, which Gretchen's going to talk quite a bit about, that they would be able to make use of the Financial Awareness Counseling Tool. The next one, this is relatively new. This came out in the spring. The repayment, sort of the quick repayment questionnaire. It asks 3 questions, studentloans.gov/repay. Again, can I see a show of hands, those people that know about that? Couple, okay, oh, that's pretty good. And hopefully you're satisfied. I was going to say leave your hands up if you like it, but ask 3 quick questions. If you have federal loans, if they were taken out before 2011, and if you work for the government. So it leads students into public service loan forgiveness or income-based repayment and tells them what they need to do next. So again, hopefully you are advising your students of this, and you're also advising those people that meet with students about their finances and advising of this resource. The last resource from federal student aid that I just wanted to bring to the forefront was the financial literacy guidance. And again, this is an 8-page document that references what financial aid considers to be key financial concepts: budgeting, borrowing, and repayment, and the tools and resources that can help communicate this information. So again, we encourage you to certainly make use of it in your office, but to share it with other offices on campus who may be talking to students about their finances. And lastly, I felt like this is always just an important slide to remind everybody, about the students who are most at risk of default. And the non-completer number is, the non-completer stat up there is something I think we all share. Those are the big defaulters. So a lot of this, the efforts that we're making are hopefully, and we'll hear more from Gretchen, about academic performance and persistence and completion, and some of the things that we can help students who may be falling by the wayside due to financial stress and concerns. So part of the point of this slide as well was, if you cannot do quote-unquote financial literacy or provide services to all of your students, you might want to start with the neediest, and some of these are most likely some of the categories of those students who tend to be at risk of default and probably need financial literacy education. So I'd like to introduce Gretchen Holthaus, and Gretchen can tell you a bit more about the work that she's doing, and she's a great resource because she does a lot of financial literacy research, and she has co-authored an online program that she's going to tell you more about. But as I mentioned earlier, I met Gretchen at the National Summit for Collegiate Financial Wellness, and so I didn't just kind of pick her off the street and say, please come and help me, but I encouraged Gretchen to apply to the Virtual Student Foreign Service Program. Just overloading you with acronyms, right? But vsfs.gov is that program. And the State Department started that several years ago, and many federal agencies participate in that, and FSA is one of them. And agencies describe projects that they're doing, and so for the last couple of years, I have described financial literacy initiatives at federal student aid, because I share probably what many of you share, is that need for more resources. So that's a way of creatively finding additional resources. So I post the financial literacy project on this site, and students are able to apply to the project, and it comes out in July. Interviews are in August and starting September. So I'll be working with Gretchen, and I'm actually working with a financial aid administrator from the West Coast who was getting her master's in public, her MPA. So I have a couple of people peripherally that are helping with financial literacy at federal student aid and getting a lot of firsthand information from them. And Gretchen is a great resource. And so I encourage you to consider directing maybe some of your students there, because it allows them to have a personal one-on-one relationship with federal student aid. So it's a little bit of an opportunity to sort of get in the back door or even the front door and work on this very important subject. So look forward to hearing more from Gretchen. Thank you.
All right. I just first want to say that I really appreciate the opportunity to intern with Federal Student Aid this year and bring some of my real-world experience, right, in financial counseling to the work that I'm doing with FSA. I want to share a little bit about my background and experience with you all. So you do get a glimpse of how passionate I am about this topic and why I get up every single day and do this work. I began my work in financial literacy actually the last month that I was enrolled as a student, as an undergraduate at Wichita State University. We received a federal college access challenge grant, and they were hoping to get a student perspective on how to create a financial literacy tool that students would be interested in using. And so I was brought in to assist with that. My work obviously grew and continued over the next several years, and as we built a product that was free for colleges across the country to utilize, we had the opportunity to travel and share about the work that we were doing. We, of course, then also had lots of local opportunities come available to share about financial literacy as well. So we began presenting at orientation events and college fairs in our hometown as well as in our region. And we soon became known as the local experts on financial education. And so within about 6 months of launching this website and this product, we started receiving requests from faculty, students, and staff at our home university for financial counseling. We recognized at that point that we really were doing financial education and outreach, and we maybe didn't have all of the tools to help with the budgeting and the financial counseling piece that some of these folks were really in desperate need of. we started to look at other universities and how they were coping with this issue, and we began to see that they were creating student money management centers. And so we decided that that might be an appropriate avenue for us to go down. We created a center. I was involved in helping get that launched at our institution about 2 years after the website was created. I then decided I wanted to go on and try to do some more research on this topic. As many schools were creating these centers, I found that there wasn't a lot of data on what worked and what was effective, although I had seen firsthand the effectiveness of working with these students and helping them get connected to resources that they may need. I'm going to talk a little bit more throughout this presentation about my experience in student money management, as well as some of the best practices that we're starting to see, and how you can implement some of these on your campuses or coordinate with other offices who may be able to do so. Okay, so I think providing financial education really does just make sense. We know that 70% of our students are stressed out about their financial situation. This stress has all kinds of negative academic outcomes for them. We see lower academic performance. They're more likely to reduce the number of classes they're taking if they're experiencing high levels of financial stress. They withdraw from college at a higher rate, and if they do graduate, it usually takes them longer to earn that degree. Conversely, when we provide academically supported financial education, we see some really positive outcomes. We see that students do increase their knowledge, they have decreased financial risk, they're more responsible with their money, and they graduate college at higher rates. So to me, this is an area that we all can invest some time in and some of our resources to help students manage their stress and find ways to help carve out that path for them to college completion. There's a really interesting study that ACT did several years ago, and they asked chief academic officers or provosts at universities across the country, why do you see your students dropping out of college? And they gave two very important reasons, and they said these are actually equally important factors. Number one, they're not academically prepared, okay? And then number two, they don't have adequate personal financial resources. And the study did another interesting thing. They then went on to ask them what services they're providing in both of those areas. What we see is that universities have traditionally done very well in finding ways to support students academically. We see that 97% have tutoring, 90% have a writing center, 84% have a library orientation, and this list actually went on to name 16 other areas that they had identified for programming that they have implemented academically. Now, we can kind of debate as to why these supports may be stronger than the financial supports, but in my opinion, when you look at academics, we obviously tend to excel academically, and so we know how to help students with those issues. The financial piece on the right-hand side of the slide shows us that typically we have not done as much for the financial piece. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for financial aid administrators to bring this topic to the forefront at your university and help make sure that institutions are providing the same level of support financially as they are academically. We see that 83% of universities stated that they were offering pre-enrollment financial aid advising. I think this may indicate that some of us don't even know what financial literacy initiatives we have in place on campus. This is a requirement, right, for anyone receiving federal student aid, so we would expect those numbers to be very high. 63% of institutions reported giving any form of short-term or emergency loan. Again, I think this number is very low. We see really high success rates with these emergency loan programs. If a student has a $500 bill, for example, that is preventing them from re-enrolling in the next semester, Georgia State is one university who has made a loan to those students, and they receive then thousands of dollars in tuition back the next semester as students are able to re-enroll. That small investment of $300, $500 can help a student continue and persist throughout college. 50% 3%, about half of all universities, reported providing even as little as one money management workshop to their students. So obviously, I think this is an area for huge improvement, and is something we can all focus on in the work that we do. So you may be wondering, okay, so that's what academic support officers stated. What do students say? Why are they telling us that they're leaving college? And Bill and Melinda Gates had the same question. They provided some funding for a study to be done, and the students came back and they told them the number one reason we're dropping out is because we need to work to support ourselves. Okay? 52% of students told us that they flat out could not afford the tuition and fees. And I think that first figure is really getting at some of the living costs and the expenses that students may not have planned for, in addition to the tuition and fees. You may be wondering what you can do to help with this issue. There's several different methods that universities use to provide financial education. I'm going to list a few here. These vary in terms of the level of effort that's required, as well as the level of financing you may need. So there are some very low-cost initiatives that do have a pretty big impact when working with students. Outreach education, this is just simply tabling events, right? Or it could be programs that you host on campus. You can do targeted outreach efforts. We worked with financial aid to look at students who are at risk of defaulting on their loans and did some targeted outreach. So we were providing emails as well as mailed letters. We realized that many students were only receiving information through their student email account, and if they had withdrawn from the university, they may not even know that they were headed towards default. Online education, this may be just as simple as linking to a website on your financial aid webpage. As part of an academic course, whether that be a one class period discussion or if it's a several-week curriculum that you develop, and then peer-to-peer financial counseling, which probably does take the most effort, but has some really high returns. So what do we know that works? When we look at college students, we want to focus on what's developmentally appropriate. So considering what these students already know and where we want them to be in terms of their financial literacy when they graduate. Just-in-time research shows us that we want to focus our programs on topics that students are already interested in and already have questions on. We can start to analyze patterns of what we see students coming into our offices for, whether that be they're running out of money at a certain point in the year, or they have questions about moving off campus and they don't understand a contract or a lease they're signing. We can start to see these patterns and build programming around those questions that students have. And active learning, we just know in general in education that hands-on learning really is the best, right? And so students tend to retain that information the longest. Unfortunately, you're hearing more of a lecture style from me today. But if a student was able to go through a budgeting workshop, they would likely remember that information much longer than hearing it in a lecture type format. And anything that we can do to destigmatize this topic, I think, is very helpful. Helping create conversations among their peers and bring awareness to these financial challenges that others are facing. And then, of course, really utilizing cross-campus partnerships. The most effective programs don't just take place in one office, but it's really a campus-wide initiative. So this may be you getting together a group of folks who have similar interests, creating a board to work on these issues together. Okay. I'm going to list out a few more ways that you can partner with other offices on campus. I think I've probably partnered with every office you can at my home institution, whether it be in a student success office or academic program. There's really endless opportunities for collaboration. Whether it's providing presentations at orientation or junior or senior days to students who are looking at how to plan for the cost of college, or if it's partnering with career services and going to their jobs fairs to help students who are seeking out ways to increase their income, right? That's a target audience we can tap into. We know that they may be in need of more financial resources. So setting up some information booths at those events. TRIO programs are required to provide financial education, so they're probably already providing some on your campus. How can you collaborate with them and make these events larger or support them in those efforts? And then academic programs, whether it be a business school where students are interested in learning how to help others with creating a budget and financial planning, or a social work program where they're needing contact hours with students who may be in distress. There's a variety of ways to provide these services. And I want you to know that they don't have to be a high-cost initiative to work. About half of universities are providing these types of workshops, and half of them who are have no funding whatsoever. So they're finding creative ways to do this outreach. Of the 50% who do have funding, 30% about have $5,000 or less. So you really can do financial education on a shoestring budget. Here's some free financial resources for you to look at. Indiana University has podcasts that have been very popular with students. You can look at some of these other resources as well. One thing that I will mention is our community of financial educators tends to be very generous in sharing the resources that we have with one another. I think we all see this as a collective effort, and so if there's a university that's doing something that you're interested in, feel free to reach out to them. mycollegemoneyplan.org is the resource we're going to talk about in greater detail later on. Financial counseling programs, as I mentioned before, these are probably the most in-depth kind of programs that you can create or work with on your campus. And they're supported in a variety of different ways. So you may be thinking, how could we fund something like this at our institution? Very often, students are interested in internships. They may volunteer, or they may be hired as work studies positions to do this type of work. And what these centers do is they provide not only financial counseling, such as helping students work through monthly budgets or look for and apply for scholarships, but they also do outreach education. So these students who are already involved in their campus and in their community can go out and give presentations to their fraternity or sorority or the accounting club that they're a member of. So there's lots of opportunities for students to help you in your outreach efforts. So you may be wondering, why peer counseling? How does a student know more than I do as a financial aid administrator with maybe 20 years of experience? And while they may not know as much technically as you do, they are closer to the learning process. And what we see is that sometimes they are more effective in teaching their peers than a staff member could be. I give an example of when students would come in and ask, what is the most affordable apartment in the area that students should look into? I wouldn't very often have that information as a staff member. I was looking for something very different than undergraduate students were, but the peer financial coaches had that information readily available. There's psychological benefits, both intellectually as well as emotionally, in terms of their development. Not only are they gaining knowledge, but they're learning how to work with peers. It also helps provide a personal contact in somewhat of a remote environment. We were actually located in a geology building and then a chemistry lab for our first setup. Once we brought in peer financial coaches, we started seeing that students were stopping by to meet them for lunch. They were stopping by to work on a group project or drop something off. And a lot of those students actually ended up becoming clients and seeking out some additional financial guidance. Students tend to see themselves as users instead of recipients, and I think this helps destigmatize that topic and bring them into your office. It also increases participation among students and provides an immediate feedback loop to administrators. I have a funny little story I'll share with you on why I think this is so beneficial. I had planned what I thought was going to be a great event with several financial literacy programs in place in which students could participate in a financial literacy boot camp. And at the end, they would receive a camouflage t-shirt that proudly displayed their participation. When I shared this idea with my students in the office, they looked at me and told me that they didn't think anyone would come to that event. I had spent a fair amount of time looking into this and was disappointed to hear that they didn't think it would be successful, but ultimately they were right. What I didn't recognize is that I was no longer in touch with the current culture among college students, even though I was just 3 years out. They told me that camouflage is so 2007 and no one would want that t-shirt, which makes sense because I went to college in 2007. So we found a different t-shirt that they were motivated to come and get. These are examples of other programs that students had helped us create and develop around topics that were of interest to them. I'll let you read through this list, but I'll point out a couple that we partnered directly with the financial aid office. Cash Cab is a very easy and efficient way to talk to students about financial questions. We checked out a golf cart from our local golf course on campus and decked it out with the financial aid office information. We then offered students rides to their classes on a very cold winter day for free. A lot of them took us up on that opportunity, and we got to share with them about the FSA and help answer any questions they might have. Again, this didn't cost us anything and was a really effective way to get ourselves out there working with students. Another event that has been successful is the Game of Life. We have about 500 participants each year that come to this event. Financial aid is involved in providing a booth where they give students estimates of what their student loans might look like. Students then also look at what their average pay may be, depending on what their major is from that college. And they then go to various booths where we have volunteers such as auto dealerships, insurance providers, daycare centers, that then give them an accurate estimate of what those costs will be when they graduate. This is a really fun way to help students start to think about how they're going to repay student loans and put that on their radar when they're taking out loans while in college. Another example of an event that's been successful is The Price is Right. While sometimes I think people tend to see these types of events as frivolous, they really are designed as a way to get students to open up and share about deep financial concerns that they have. While they may look very fun, as you can tell in the photos here, The Price is Right was a game that we had created with the spinning wheel, where students would spin and guess the cost of something on our campus, whether that be tuition or the interest rate on their federal student loans, or the cost of a package of ramen noodles. And at this event, we had a student spin the wheel, and we asked her how much ramen noodles would cost. She told us she didn't know, but it would be too expensive for her. So we saw that as an opportunity to pull her aside, of course, and get her connected to other resources. We found out that that student had been homeless during that week, and the first meal she had eaten was the slice of pizza that we provided at our event. So while these opportunities may seem fun and engaging, and they are, they're also opportunities for connecting with students at a deeper level and helping get to the students who are most in need. We know that debt management education in college, when it's provided, positively impacts alumni giving. Students who've had these types of programs on their campuses have a more positive regard for the university, and they're less likely to feel like they were taken advantage of. They also have increased knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors regarding money. The Financial Literacy Project at Wichita State was the resource that I mentioned earlier that was funded by a federal College Access Challenge grant. I want to share with you that there is opportunities for you to seek out funding for grants and work with even local businesses or other groups in your community to find some funding to provide this financial education as well. MyCollegeMoneyPlan.org is currently maintained in a student success office at Wichita State, and so although it's not part of financial aid, we work very closely with one another, sharing presentations at orientation and some of these events that we do together. MyCollegeMoneyPlan.org is a free website. There's no advertisements in it, and we don't collect any personal financial information. It was really just written to help universities who don't have a budget for this type of work to be able to provide financial education. This is what the main page of the website looks like. If you go to mycollegemoneyplan.org, you'll see that there's 3 different sections here for students, families, and teachers. This can be used as a tool for incoming students, current students, as well as alumni. In the course, you can learn how to create a monthly spending plan, learn how to create a 4-year or 2-year college financial plan, depending what type of your institution you're at, as well as build credit, find scholarships, and manage student loan debt. Students can use the course browsing it by topic. If they forgot to fill out the FAFSA and they need some guidance in doing that, we have screenshots that can help walk them through the process. There's also teaching resources that are available. So if you have a first-year experience course at your institution where this could be embedded as part of their curriculum, you can actually create a class code where the instructor would track the student progress. They can see how long they spent in the course, how many modules they completed, how many interactions they had with various links to track that. This is an example of one tool that's in the website. On the left-hand side there, you see that we ask students to add up the costs of college. On the right-hand side then, we ask students, how are you going to meet these costs? The green section is, of course, where they'd love to stay because that's money you don't have to pay back. We know that 2/3 of students will dip into that yellow section, however, which is federal student loans. Students can use this as a tool to see if there's areas where they can reduce their expenses on the left to decrease their student loans, or if there's areas in the green section that they could increase through work or scholarships where they can also decrease their student loan debt. Part 1 of the course is really about helping students understand the financial costs of college, as well as other student success factors like how many hours should I work while I'm in school so that I make sure my grades stay where they need to be? How do I pick a major, and how do I know what I will earn based off of that major so I know how much debt I could reasonably take on? Part 2 of the course then helps students become financially independent once they're in school. We touch on a lot of different important things. One example is that students need to get a bank or a credit union that they can use. We know about 25% are unbanked or not using a bank currently and are paying really high fees for check cashing services and other resources outside of the mainstream economy. We also talk about credit reports and identity theft. College students are 5 times more likely to have their identity stolen, so we think these are all really important topics for students to leave our institutions knowing about. We conducted a study and we implemented mycollegemoneyplan.org into a first-year experience class. We had 3 class sessions, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example, where students were given in-class lessons that corresponded with the online course. So students completed the online course as part of their reading that week. They then had some lesson plans that come directly from the website and are already pre-made and ready for instructors to use as part of their course that week. We effectively increased financial literacy within that 1-week period. So we know that even this small amount of time can impact what students know about their finances. If you don't have a platform or an avenue to embed a full curriculum, you may also just be able to use some of the lesson plans for short activities that you do. For example, we use one of the credit games that's built into the lesson plans as part of a 5-minute exercise at our orientation. You can also, of course, just link to mycollegemoneyplan.org on your website, or distribute this information with your other educational resources that you're providing. Okay, and I know Elizabeth is going to speak with you all a little bit today about what your plan is to incorporate financial literacy at your institution. Hopefully, we provided some examples of ways that students can receive some of the support at your school. And one of those things that you may be able to do is to at least check out mycollegemoneyplan.org or potentially link to it through your website.
Thanks, Gretchen. I'm afraid I intimidated her. I said, wait, don't take too much time because we want to hear from everybody and get some questions. But so I have some questions for you, so we're not done yet. And so I'd like for you all to maybe take this opportunity to stretch, but not until you have an answer to the questions that I'm going to ask you. So this session is a lot of information. It's like, oh, great, now what? It's so overwhelming. But so we hope that in some way we might have motivated you to think about doing something or doing more than you're doing. So I just wanted to throw out a bunch of questions to see if, in fact, that might have crossed your mind and you're going to go back to your school and you're going to do it, or at least you're going to make a note to self that I should do that. So Gretchen just shared that My College Money Plan and the first year experience combination proved to be successful. So if you would acknowledge yes to the answer and just stand up, I hope that I can get all of you to stand up with all of my questions. So my first question is, who's going to go take a look at My College Money Plan? And if you are, I'd love to have you stand up. Who's going to reach out to their first year experience moderator to talk about potentially linking those two? Who's going to make an effort to cross-collaborate on their campus, potentially maybe form a financial literacy advisory group? Who's going to check out some of the free resources that were posted? Maybe you're going to check out the research appendix that's in the back that has volumes of information. Again, we don't want to overwhelm you, but we think there's some really great stuff in there. Reach out and look at those job descriptions and potentially adopt some of that on your campus. And maybe look at the FINRA, the financial capability, those of you that are concerned about the financial capability in the United States, which is a lot of great stuff in there, especially as it focuses on student loans. And the very last thing that I'd like for you to do that you're here is potentially just chat with a neighbor to find out what they might be doing and what's working or what their frustration is, because I think the benefit of this conference here is sharing best practices and learning from one another. So we really appreciate you coming. We hope that you'll stick around and ask some questions or share anything that you want on the topic. We know maybe you might have missed lunch if you're here, but the mics are open, and Gretchen and I would be very happy to hear from those people in the audience. Thanks again. Oh, and I also thought if I could get you all standing, it would look like we were getting a standing ovation to anyone that might come in the door and look in, so. Anyway, thanks. Hi.
Hi, I'm Mark Antrowitz. One thing about the slide that was comparing academic support with financial literacy support, it's kind of a characteristic difference that I've seen across lots of campuses. So the academic support is one-on-one. I mean, it's tutoring, it's workshops for writing, and it's much less so a group setting. Whereas all the efforts, or predominantly the efforts for financial literacy counseling, except for peer-to-peer counseling, are in a group setting, or are not person-to-person, but person-to-computer. And I think that does make a significant difference in the effectiveness of financial literacy programs. People usually have a burning question that they need answered. And if you have a resource center where they can come in and talk to someone, it can solve a lot of problems. The other comment that I have is that there's awfully little research on the financial fragility of students. How little of a financial shortfall does it take to have a student drop out? We don't know. We know it's somewhere under $1,000, but we don't have detailed data. So when you're designing an emergency loan or emergency grant program, it's just guesswork what the amount should be. Thank you.
Yeah, the FINRA survey does reference financial fragility, and one of the revealing statistics was that about half of those that were surveyed could not withstand an emergency and have enough money to finance 3 months of expenses. So that's very concerning. So there is some reference to financial fragility, but that's a great point. And then the counseling, the one-on-one, I mean, I think we referenced early on the experimental site. So I think it's sort of a delicate balance, though, because people want to do more, and maybe they say, well, make it a requirement to do more, but then people say, we have enough responsibility. So now we're sort of inviting you to try to make this a campus-wide thing, not just about financial aid, because there might be something looming around the corner. Who knows, the next regulation says, now financial aid officers, you have to do this as it relates to financial coaching or counseling with your students. So thanks for those comments, Mark. Anybody else? Well, sure now. Now can I get you all to stand up again? Okay, you can all stand up and leave. Thanks so much again for coming. Oh, we got somebody here. Oh, hold
Sorry,
on,
I have a
hold on.
question.
That's quite all right, please.
Can you tell me about some of your more creative, like campus partnerships, like maybe academic departments that you partnered with that were like unusual?
Sure, Gretchen's the
'Cause
collaboration.
as soon as you mentioned that, my mind started going crazy, and I was like, oh, I bet
Yes.
she has some good ideas.
Yes, sure. One of our most fruitful collaborations was actually with the business school. What we did is we noticed that a lot of students were needing assistance completing their taxes, which seems somewhat unrelated to the work that we do. But of course, you can't fill out a FAFSA without having your taxes done. So there are students who are willing to get certified and trained as a volunteer income tax assistant through United Way and the IRS. And these students will then serve as free tax preparers, right, at your institution to help students get their taxes done for free so that they're ready to fill out a FAFSA. That's one example of a collaboration where we had, I think, 20 students participating and providing over $50,000 of free services on our campus alone. Other collaborations that we have done include, of course, TRIO. So we worked with McNair Scholars to help them plan for the cost of graduate school. We also have collaborated with the Counseling and Testing Center on campus. A lot of the students that they see that come in for financial distress or come in for counseling are under financial distress. And so working with them to create referral services between the two offices. We worked with academic advisors. We go to all of their training meetings and talk to them about how they can help refer students to our office as well, as many students will first talk to their advisor about their inability to re-enroll for the next semester. The list really goes on and on. Pretty much every student group on campus has asked us to present at one point or another, whether that be a fraternity or an accounting group, like I mentioned before. We'll do fun activities and events. We have a game themed around like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and we have students team up and partner and create an opportunity for a competitive atmosphere where they can learn about things like credit or budgeting. I'll go back to my slide here and list this, just so you can see these as well. Homemade for the Holidays is an example of an event we coordinated with our Student Life group on campus, and so they put this on their academic calendar for the whole year, and it's an event where students can make free gifts to give to family and friends during the holidays, right? And a lot of students participated in this. It was under $1 per gift that we came up with. And so we could serve a lot of students and talk to them about budgeting at that event as well. Toss your debt away. I think this is a really important example of one way you can tap into the culture that's already on your campus and some of the events that are already happening. The Final Four was a big event, right, that happened at Wichita State. So we did an event where they could write down what was stressing them out about their finances, toss it in a WSU basketball-themed net, and we then went back and coded all of those responses, for which we then built our programming around for the entire year. Is there another question? Sorry.
I don't have any questions,
Sure.
but I have some comments that might be useful. I work in an inner city school. It's a career school, and we train healthcare assistants and technicians in St. Louis. It's huge in St. Louis. Largest employer in the state is a medical center there with a medical school connected. Our students are all poor. Probably 98% qualify for Pell Grants. They don't drop out of school because they're poor. They drop out of school because they're being abused, because they're now suddenly homeless. You know, the issues are personal that cause them to drop out. These students exist in all of your campuses, but they blend in. They're individuals here and there. Now, we have adopted something called the trauma-informed approach. This comes out of social work, the idea. And what we've been doing with the trauma-informed approaches is that we've tried to create an environment where our, impoverished students feel safe. In fact, we've had students telling us that we are the only place in the city of St. Louis where they come, where they actually feel safe. This is a crucial thing. We also don't believe that students drop out. Students only take breaks in their education. And the way we're structured, we're a modular system. So if a student drops out during Mod 1, they can return in, say, 12 weeks, come back into Mod 1, and then continue on. That this is a really crucial part. But it only works if they felt when they dropped out that the school is the place where they wanted to be. St. Louis is known for something. It's its violence. Our students get shot. Our students are indirect victims of crime. And these are oftentimes things which have forced them out. So this is something that we have to deal with. We have to deal with how they're, feeling about these kinds of issues. And they're spread out among all the schools, especially if it's a city school. If you have a campus that's in a city, you will have some of these people, and you need to figure out how to work with them because, they can complete. We used to run 58% retention rate. We now run 86 to 90% retention rate, and we run 70 to 75% placement rate in job-related, positions that they've been trained in. So please think about, creating a safe environment. Don't shame people. Don't make them, you mentioned, don't stigmatize. This is a really crucial thing for people who are impoverished. They are already feeling bad.
You may have noticed on the session descriptions, there's a new session this year for public benefits. So talked about, sort of the food concern and housing and so forth. So that's something new that's been added that might be of interest to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brenda Vaughn, and I'm with the Georgia Student Finance Commission, and I've been in financial aid for about 16 years. And 10 of those, I've been in financial literacy with different guarantee agencies, traveling the country, doing these types of events and all. And so it's so nice to see it all combined into one presentation to be shared with a group of people who are passionate about financial literacy. I think one of the things that we have found is that people don't feel that they're credible enough to do these types of things. So one of the things I always like to share is the AFCPE. It's the Association for Financial Counseling, Planning, and Education, and they have a certification, which is an AFC, an Accredited Financial Counseling certification, which Consumer Credit Counseling Services have. Department of Defense have said has to be on every base. They have to have an AFC on a base to help the service members and those kinds of things. So if you're interested in some sort of certification for you, or you can probably find AFCs already on your campus. They're in Extension and your Family and Consumer Sciences departments. They help with a lot of research in the organization, but AFCPE is the association and AFC is the accreditation that you're looking for. Gretchen, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Thank you for sharing. Sorry. I was just at the AFCPE conference 2 weeks ago, so that's a great thing to mention. Thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I'm Robert Bodie. I'm the Director of Financial Aid at the University of Wisconsin River Falls. Elizabeth, this is really kind of a comment for you to take back to folks at FSA. The comment was made about the importance of being able to provide emergency grants to students or emergency loans. That's good if you have a resource like that. Not all schools have a resource like that. My school's fairly small, so we don't. But we could use flexibility in the ability to unequally disperse funds. One of the things I found in my way too many years in higher education is that students have startup costs, typically first year or first semester. And sometimes we need to be able to give them a little bit of extra money in that first semester. And then they can start to earn their federal work study, and they're usually better off second semester. But sometimes that can become a big obstacle, just not being able to make that last payment on the tuition and fees and housing for first semester. Suddenly they've got a hold, they can't register, they can't get their financial aid for the next semester. So we could use some flexibility, so I just want to toss that back as an idea that if you could get that kind of discussed a little bit, that might be something that we could see in some regulations in the future. The second thing is Wisconsin has a new law requiring us to provide loan information as well as cumulative grant information and basically financial aid information, financial disclosures to all students coming in. And that's a good thing. Unfortunately, we don't have all the information that we need to provide all that data to the student. And so one thing that we're missing from the National Student Loan Data Service is the interest rate on the loans that the student has already borrowed. We would have to go back and try to calculate what that rate is based on, when they first took out the loan, or whatever calculation we would have to do. You've got that, so would you please just give it to us in a file?
Listen, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Standing up to go? Or?
I'm interested in starting a peer-to-peer program. Do you have any resources to teach or for selection of the peers and to train, et cetera, for that
Well,
type of
there's
program?
quite a bit of information on peer-to-peer in the research appendix, but
Okay,
I
great.
think Gretchen could
Great.
probably maybe share some
haven't had a chance to
firsthand
look at that.
experience.
So-
And also, the department has an experimental site for near peer, and we find some interesting scenarios in which schools are dealing with third-party services, nonprofits in their community that are training their work-study students about quote-unquote financial literacy, filling out the FAFSA and so forth. So the students are being trained to speak with students in the high school about financial aid and financial literacy. So it's a near-peer type of scenario, which there have been some pretty good results, and we'll share more of the results when the reports come in.
Thank you.
I'm also interested in the peer-to-peer counseling, but did you see students coming in to talk about financial aid questions, or was it more financial education questions, and how do you separate that?
Right. Yeah, so we worked closely with financial aid. They're part of our training for our students, and we, negotiated what we thought the students may be able to help with and what they should refer for. And we worked very closely. We had a direct line to financial aid where we could bring in a student right away if there was kind of an emergency situation that came up that needed some financial aid assistance. I will also address the training question as well. Training, when we look at this, is pretty diverse in how it occurs. If you have a personal financial planning program on your campus, sometimes those students are already trained to do this work. Others may create a 8-week or a 16-week course that helps train students on this. Our training was really modeled after some of the peer-to-peer training we had done for things like tutoring, as well as other services. And then, of course, we built in the financial piece of that, utilizing some of our tools like the budgeting worksheet, or our scholarship notebook, and how students could use those resources. But a lot of it is kind of starting with what you have in place already on your campus and building off of that training. So you may want to involve FERPA as part of your training, diversity training, counseling and testing, how to recognize when a student is escalating, right, in at their stress level. So I would start looking at your local campus if you'd like some resources on that. I'm actually working on a study that the survey will be sent out this semester, addressing how universities are providing this type of training. And so it's on its way, but I don't have the data yet.
So thanks for sticking around. There are two publications up here. There's the one that I referenced for the Financial Literacy and Education Commission. For those of you that need to be sort of making the case on your campus that this is important stuff, it's a very viable report that was commissioned by the Treasury Department. Got a handful of those, and also the Financial Literacy Guidance, which is that 8-page document that I'm hoping you'll take a look at and either make use of in your office or share with others. So please feel free to come up and take it. Thank you again.